At NxtGen, we actually tell our customers that they should be building a digital business without actually investing in IT infrastructure. I mean, that's the thought process that we promote to our customers. So what happens is most of the value in our business enablement actually happens with the application, not with the IT infrastructure. But IT infrastructure is key for the application to run effectively. So what we tell our customers is just outsource the complexity of running this IT infrastructure to us. You have infinite resources available to you from NxtGen's resources, and leverage those resources to run your applications effectively. I mean, both not just in terms of just availability, but delivering a very good end user experience. If you take a typical enterprise deployment, IT infrastructure deployment, there are two sides to it. I mean, one is an active side and other is a passive side. So to ensure high availability to the enterprise application, people deploy almost double the amount of resources to ensure that availability. So, but if you take that same thing, maybe it's very viable for an enterprise to do it, but if you take a service provider, we're talking about hundreds of servers and tens of switches. When we're doing that, and if you have 50% of these resources standing idle, and these days most of the equipment is so resilient, I mean, they hardly fail. I mean, so they fail once in 3 years or so. So if you have to actually block your investment for 50% of resources waiting for a rare failure on the infrastructure, that's not the ideal architecture to do it. So what we decided was that, I mean, is there a way that we can actually use all the resources that are available, and in the event of a failure, I mean, can we ensure that there may be a slight degradation in performance, but you can actually deliver the same level of resiliency but tremendous performance during regular times. So to do that, I mean, there are a few things that we had to think differently. So it's just not that we drop the architecture, the technology has to support it, and the technology comes from the vendor. So one of the reasons why we reached out to Brocade was that typically in a network architecture, they deploy what they call STP, spanning tree protocol. In the spanning tree protocol, you have an active side of the network and a passive side of the network, and 50% of network resources sit idle. But we decided we move to a newer protocol called Trill. So when we deploy Trill, you actually have all the resources functioning together as one resource. But in the event of a failure, there is a fraction of infrastructure which is not available. So that degrades the performance a little bit, but the availability is never impacted. So this is a more effective way of actually deploying an enterprise architecture, especially for a service provider. So that's where Brocade brought in. I mean, we actually chose this new range of switches from Brocade. We actually work on these switches as a single switch. So you may have tens of switches in your network, but all of them behave as one, and they run on a Trill protocol. So all the switches, the bandwidth is available to the applications and the infrastructure below. We are not waiting for 50% of the infrastructure to take over. That's the biggest step that we took with Brocade, and Brocade's new switches, new architecture actually supported this deployment. What we also did is that with Brocade and with what is going to come, we actually sat together, we made this infrastructure deployment as a blueprint for all our data centers across the country, and we've standardized it so that when I'm actually building my skill sets to deploy it and maintain it on a 24/7 basis, it's easier for me, and all of them behave as one switch. So it's actually a single console that we manage it. So it's a lot simpler to manage, but more importantly, it delivers the same level of resiliency, but at a very great performance. I mean, that's the reason why we chose Brocade.